Hi Chris, how are you?
Good afternoon, Rod. Yeah, I'm very well. And here we are on sunny Sunday, the 26th. Yep, 26th. I was just checking because we're a bit out of sync of May. And it's my fault we're recording a day early as I'm planning to go on holiday, mini break with the children just for a little bit in this country.
Well, that's very nice. Considering it was my fault last time because I wandered off to Edinburgh, I can't really blame you too much for going on holiday with your kids.
Maybe I should have planned ahead a little bit further than 2 days ago. So apologies for that on my part. But anyway, here we are. We're together. We're talking. It's the important thing, isn't it? So why don't we dive straight into follow-up? Because we've got quite a bit of news that you've pulled together this week.
Yeah, well, it's been a few days since we've recorded, and once again, Apple didn't buy Nintendo, so I had to struggle around to find some bits and pieces. But thankfully, there was quite a bit on. Quite a lot of it involving Google and Microsoft and OpenAI, as is often the want these days. So, yeah, I'm with you. Let's do some follow-up. And the first one, and the reason it's in follow-up, is that OpenAI has struck a deal with Reddit to train its AI on people's posts. And this will be relevant later when we start to talk about some of the other stories, particularly that are affecting Google. But you can see the links now, can't you? You can understand why Reddit made all that fuss, get rid of their moderators, make people log in, and to get rid of the apps because they wanted to own all the data so they could strike deals like this.
Yeah, it feels like it's Reddit's years coming together now. The strategic change did a few years ago. Now they're going to sell all their content to OpenAI. It feels like there's more of these shoes to drop, I guess is the right terminology, of more content deals happening with these AI providers, as AI providers realise that they need to start licensing it, and they realise it's really good for their models, and obviously for content owners, they've got a great way of a new revenue stream. So it does feel like it's a win for Reddit. I would imagine people of the community will be less than happy, but yeah, I'm not surprised by this. It feels like this should have happened a while ago.
Well, yeah, I mean, what you say there about content owners, I suppose technically Reddit do own the content, but I think there's probably quite a lot of cheesed off users that have put their hearts and souls in very much the same way as Stack Overflow. People give good answers to those things, and they're just popping up in search in large language models now. So I think I'd feel slightly aggrieved if it was the community, unless there's some sort of payback to them. But yeah, I agree. I can see why OpenAI have done it. I can see why Reddit have done it. It makes me wonder, down the line, what does a Reddit look like in 10 years' time if these LLMs totally take over? Do they just write? Are they talking to themselves?
It's a good question. So I wonder how many users Reddit lost last year when they changed a bit of their model, and I wonder how many users they're going to lose now with this deal, or whether it's a drop in the ocean. And actually, give it a couple of years, and everybody will be used to that. This is the way the world works, and everything will settle down. I don't know. When's X going to get in there and strike a deal with OpenAI to peruse its content with their login? I'd be curious to see where else this is going to reach, I think.
Well, we're waiting for Apple to do the same thing at WWDC, aren't we? So I guess we'll see. Moving along and relevant, Google, when I talked about their event, Google I/O last week, a lot of that was AI focused. They've obviously got their Gemini model. Well, this week, they've changed the search engine on Google that if you search, it will try and give you an AI answer first, which has proven problematic. But more than that, some of the stuff that started to bubble to the top is quite disturbing in a way. I mean, the Ars Technical article that we've linked to has it down as treating jokes as facts, but if you read this, the search query is how to prevent cheese sliding off pizza in the first part of this. And if you read the recipe that AI has given, it suggests putting some glue. Mix 1/8 of a cup of non-toxic glue into the sauce, can make it tackier and the cheese stick. Now, that's probably not the best way to keep your cheese on your pizza.
Technically correct, though. Just for a moment, you could put some glue on your pizza and it may stick. But if you were then to eat your pizza, because I guess is the question, how do I make my cheese stay on my pizza and it be edible afterwards? You need to give it a little bit more instruction. But obviously, if somebody just took this at face value, that would not be good.
Yeah. Would not. The second, I've got nothing good to say about that. The second thing, the Google search is blink not making sound fluid, and I presume it's not making a tick tock sound for your indicator, as we'd call them in the UK. And the recommendation by Google AI is that it could be caused by low blinker fluid, which I'm pretty sure isn't a thing in an electrical connection.
maybe it is somewhere, but we've never heard of it. I don't know. It seems very strange, though, doesn't it? Blinker fluid.
Yeah.
Cool, blimey. It is. Yeah, this is problematic, I think.
And last but not least, although there was one that's slightly apocryphal that I'll mention at the end. Running with scissors, health benefits. This apparently leads to boosting the immune system, improving blood flow, and providing a mild facial exercise.
Sorry, running with scissors.
Yeah. Running with scissors is a cardio exercise that some say is effective and semi-controversial. Laughing, which is part of running with scissors, can have physical benefits such as boosting and all the stuff I read already.
It sounds like it's just more running, not with scissors. If you know, the benefits are running, irrelevant of what you're carrying, but it is a bit concerning, isn't it? And I guess it goes back to the age-old thing of don't believe everything you read on the internet, but it feels like it's worse. It feels like we're getting worse before we get better, but are there signs of it getting better?
No, I think it is getting worse. The last one, which was how do I stop being depressed in San Francisco? And apparently the recommendation was you go and jump off the Golden Gate Bridge.
Wow. That's not good, is it?
No. So
Maybe
this is
leave
poor
San
Google.
Francisco would be more viable.
Well, see a therapist, you could come up with, some help for people rather than just suggest that. Which, to link it back to Reddit a minute ago, apparently linked to an original Reddit post by somebody back in the day. So it's sort of treating those sort of canonical. They're not canonical, are they? Those responses to people that are probably, as we know from the internet, full of trolls and making it into these large language models. And Google is apparently manually having to go edit a lot of these things to stop them popping up in people's searches.
Yeah, I was just reading about that. That is interesting that they're manually editing it. It's going to be interesting to see how Apple play this as well, assuming we're going to get lots of AI functionality in this year's Apple releases, which obviously they've already touted that it's coming. But how are they going to deal with things like this? Because it just looks dumb. And I think there's any other word for it. It looks dumb and stupid. But yet, here we are 2 years into this OpenAI piece, and we're still getting silly answers coming out of these AI bots. I know we're talking about Google at the moment, which isn't OpenAI, but it hasn't improved at the rate I think we all thought it would have improved by now. Because you'd hope if AI was so clever and these large language models that it would also know that glue is inedible and putting glue on a pizza isn't the right thing and running with scissors is wrong, and so on. All the things we've discussed, there should be in the models reasons for why they're bad or wrong or incorrect, and it feels like it needs to apply that before it submits the answer to the user and displays on the screen. It needs a validation step to go, should we just check this for legitimacy of accuracy? And it feels like we're missing that piece, which doesn't seem to have overly improved in the last 24 months.
If anything, I think it's worse because more and more people are using it and the sources are expanding it. And it's not artificial intelligence as such. It's predicting what word comes next, as we've said a load of times. Yep. And until they make this better, and I do worry about Apple implementing this kind of stuff, you got to think that Siri's not going to get better by doing this, is it?
I do fear for the Siri memes already. Can Siri get worse than it has been? I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
We shall see. So, as I've said at the top, Google now do this by default. If you stick it in Google, this is the search responses you get, which we said was coming, but here it is. If you want to switch it off, there's a link in the show notes to a Verge article about how to actually switch off that and go back to mostly the old way of working with Google. But yeah, this stuff is not great. It needs to improve fairly dramatically, and I think one's as bad as another for most of these search models.
It does feel like it. Feels like we've got a long way to go for maturity to improve. Interesting, the thing about turning it off in Google. I saw a bit of noise about it this week, but because I don't use Google, I didn't really understand what all the noise was around. But now, obviously, it makes a lot more sense. Actually, if you want to go back to normality, as it were, this is what you've got to do.
Yeah, interesting. And sticking with the AI theme, we've got a little piece from Slack, which bubbled up earlier this week about it's changed to terms of service within Slack. You don't use Slack, I do in work. Saying that they're going to take all your posts and all your pictures and all your uploaded files and stuff and use that for training their AI too.
Is that just for training AI though within your Slack world, or is that for training all their AI across the whole piece globally?
That seemed to be what they were saying with the original terms of service. As Slack does, they've walked back from that now and said it was a mistake, and it was literally just for, slight improvements and bits and pieces of the way that it's run, not to take all the stuff that your corporation may put into its own instance of Slack and use it for training within that. Probably Microsoft are doing this with Teams as well, and just not talking about it. But yeah, this is a poor look for Slack. Second privacy thing we've had with them, where they immediately walk back on what it is they're trying to do, but all these companies are pushing, and underneath it, Salesforce owns Slack. I'm not the greatest believer in the honesty, and I can't think of the word. Their commitment to hygiene of data and that kind of stuff from Salesforce.
Yeah, I can understand that. I can see why they would want to do it for your own model, for your corporation, your Slack channel. I think I'm using the right terminology here because I've never used Slack. But yeah, for them to just go, oh yeah, sorry, we got it slightly wrong. You'd have thought they'd have double-checked, triple-checked this wording going out there, seeing how hot people are on this. So yeah, I'm not feeling very comfortable about what Slack is saying there.
No, not at all. I agree. Moving swiftly along, let's have a quick chat about Apple, and apparently, unsurprisingly, that the rival app stores aren't going terribly well, it would seem, from within Apple. So there's been a couple of stories this week about, oh gosh, I forget the name of it. That's terrible. I've almost got it in front of me and I can't remember what it is. Riley's Alt Store Pal is what he's called it. That's what it is. Struggling to get updates, having to appeal to the EU and the DMA to get things through, how it's anti-competitive, how difficult it is to get things on there. And it's just two stories. One from Bloomberg UK, talking about the challenges of getting up and running with Alt Store Pal. And then the second one, the second
one's a link to Mastodon, and then it's update on it. Apparently the updates are coming, but it feels like you say Apple aren't rushing to allow people to put their updates through. Whether that's on purpose or whether because they're actually doing something, I don't know. But it's not a good look for Apple. You'd have thought they want to get some good press on this after all the bad press.
Yeah, and we don't need to go very far back to talk about a €2 billion fine either. And immediately you've got Spotify saying they're not getting their updates pushed through. You've got Alt Store Pal saying that these things aren't coming through either. And we're seeing a pattern emerge. And I think the EU will jump on this.
Yeah, and obviously with Alt Store, Riley's been very vocal in everything he said, around concerns with Apple. So you'd have thought you'd want to treat him more than most because he seems very vocal, and Apple's on the back foot with the EU, frankly. So I'm curious to see where they're going to go in iOS 18, whether they're even going to talk about the EU stuff globally, or whether they're just going to pretend that the EU is completely separate to the messaging they're giving all the other developers. So yeah, a bit to happen in this space. It's going to be interesting to see how Apple deal with it. I'm curious to know whether iOS 18 will bring the EU changes to all of Apple's platforms globally.
They just seem to fight every change to this absolutely tooth and nail, and it seems to make no difference to them at all. It baffles me.
Yeah, but I think they could win a lot more kudos with the developer community if they go, right, we've piloted in the EU, it's gone really, really well. You can imagine them putting some spin on and go, now before we've been asked to do it everywhere else, we're going to release this internationally, and we believe this is the foundation for the App Store for the next 15 years.
We will see.
I'm with you on this. I'd like them to do it, but I'm 60% sure they won't do it.
History tells us otherwise, doesn't it? This is the 100%.
Thing.
I mean, we remember getting quite excited last WWDC that it was going to happen. This was the year the DMA came into force, and we were expecting things last WWDC, and it didn't. I think we'll talk about Apple and some of the rumors later on, but I think this is all going to be about AI.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's going to be AI. It's not going to be about improving global laws of utilizing other things other than what Apple provides. I think you're right. Sadly, but I think they could take the opportunity to do the right thing.
Yeah, speaking of a company that didn't do the right thing, the Broadcom VMware merger/acquisition isn't going very well either. Apparently, VMware just lost a 24,000 VM customer. So this is a company called ComputerShare that's a global stock market registry operator, and it was running a mixed Nutanix and VMware infrastructure, and at some point was going to try and decide one way or the other they were going to go. But apparently the sudden cost changes that Broadcom put out there, VMware put out there, made them decide they're quite happy. They moved them all over. And that's probably quite a lot of licenses, 24,000 VMs.
That's a huge number. If you'd have asked me, I'm aware of Computer Center, but if you'd have asked me how many VMs do you think they have, I would not have guessed that many, if I'm being honest. But it doesn't take many customers for this to happen. And then, yeah, Broadcom's acquisition doesn't look quite as good as what it once did.
And in the background, for pure VM stuff, most of the other vendors have got an import your VMware machines directly onto their metal. So even the open source ones like Proxmox and Zen Orchestra have now got an agent that you can deploy to a VMware virtual machine and just move it over or import the virtual disk. It doesn't work for things like VMware Horizons, which is a VDI environment, virtual desktop environment. But for the soup to nuts, this is a hypervisor running a virtual machine with this services on it. You can just do that even on the open source thing. So VMware may have really caused themselves a problem here.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they dial back from this, but maybe it's all part of the plan. Maybe some of it was calculated that they were going to lose X number of customers, but 24,000, that's a lot of VMs to migrate.
That's a lot of VMs. Anything I missed in follow-up that we want to get in?
No, I don't think so. I don't think there's been, other than all the ongoing AI, maybe we just need an AI corner, because it feels like, especially with Apple hopping on the bandwagon, that's going to be a topic for the rest of the year. But no, I think you've nailed it.
Fair enough. Let's do some news. And straight off, an article from The Verge. The head of Canada's intelligence agency warns Canadians not to use TikTok even. That's a hell of a warning.
It's quite a warning, isn't it? It's quite a stance, isn't it? And Canada's kind of feels like usually quite quiet on these things. We don't hear a lot. They seem to be a bit like Switzerland, a neutral sort of state. But no, it's quite a thing to come out and go, don't use TikTok. We recommend people actually do not use it.
Yeah, I mean, he's saying that their data, their users' data, is available to the government of China. So this in line with what the United States is doing, trying to regulate TikTok. ByteDance suing the United States, apparently. There's something going on in the background here that either we're not aware of, because as far as I'm aware, TikTok is largely people just doing little dances in front of cameras. How useful that is, no, I guess microphones are on, GPS is on. You'll be able to draw a lot of intelligence from that kind of stuff. But at the same time, Facebook does similar, and they're not viewed in nearly the same light. They should be, but they're not viewed in nearly the same light as TikTok.
No, I'd agree with this. With any of these, whether it's Facebook.com, Instagram, you're posting data publicly, and surely China could scrape all of that if they wanted to. So unless TikTok's doing something under the scenes, that's what I'd be curious to know. Are they doing more? Are they going above and beyond? Because you are just posting content on public platforms, so anybody could scrape it. But is there something else going on with TikTok that everybody's dancing around? I don't know. It seems not a strange one, because we're seeing a lot of this. Don't use it, and your data may be available in China, but your data could be available in China on any other publicly available platform. So it just seems a bit of a weird one to me.
Well, between that and all the leakiness that we've seen from companies like Dell and others, they're more than capable of getting data from reputable organizations, as well as some sort of state-sponsored social network that's harvesting everything that's going on. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think you and I are in the same place on this one.
Yeah, it seems harmless enough to me, but what do I know? Moving swiftly along, the European Commission again, this time an announcement or a toot from them via Mastodon, saying, today we step up our enforcement actions against Microsoft. After not having received an answer to our request for information from the 14th of March regarding specific risks stemming from Bing's generative AI features, Microsoft now has until 27th May to provide it, or it could face fines and periodic penalties. This is about hallucinations and generative AI. So, fair play the EU, you're getting on with it.
And you've given Microsoft just 10 days to respond. And the 27th is Monday, which is a bank holiday. I'm not sure if it is in America, but over here in the UK, it's a bank holiday. So very interesting, that 10 days to respond. So I think that's good. We've asked you to do something, do it. So it'll be interesting to see what Microsoft come back with.
Yeah, it will. And they're really sort of leaning into the Copilot thing. We'll touch on this a little bit later with their event that happened, a few days ago now. But yeah, this is a pain point for Microsoft, because I get the feeling they're betting the company on this OpenAI thing. They can see it as being the next thing. They've changed the Windows keyboard. There's an awful lot of noise behind it. Not just Microsoft, lots of companies are doing it. We've just spent 10 minutes talking about Google's impact on this. So yeah, this is interesting times.
Yeah, it does feel potentially that this year is more of an AI year than last year. And it felt like at the time last year was the AI year. but we've definitely got a lot more this year, I think, with Microsoft, Google, and obviously Apple shoes still to drop. So yeah, it's going to be super interesting to see it. And fair play to the EU. They seem to be up in their game of getting on board quicker. You know, we're seeing all the DMA stuff. So it does feel like maybe the regulators are catching up in the EU. Obviously, not quite so in the UK yet.
That's the weird thing, though, isn't it? I mean, the EU thought to be this large and flexible body. Certainly that was the way they were painted in the UK for many years. Not that I held that particular view, but they seem a lot more agile and a lot more with it than other regulatory agencies or other governmental bodies around the world. Obviously, Japan and Holland and other places have been quite on it as well. But the EU are really coming out fighting here.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. And maybe they don't want big tech to get too comfortable like we've seen historically, and therefore they're trying to get in front of it so we don't have another iTunes or another app store getting to where it's got. So I think it's good to see us on the AI front, because I think there's a lot of promise that AI is going to change the world, but equally at the moment there's no promise it's going to be regulated. So I'm keen that they do this. I think it's the right thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think there are inherent dangers with these LLMs, as we've just seen. So, fair enough. Another thing there may be an inherent danger is people's dependency on cloud services, particularly companies' dependency on cloud services. This was a story from the Register 6 days ago now about Google Cloud going boing. It went boing quite a big way slightly earlier that week, in that they deleted second Australian company, it's an Australian pension fund's entire user account and a lot of their backups and all sorts of stuff that were on Google Cloud. Thankfully, the pension fund had offline backups, but they lost the ability to restore all that company's cloud instances, which is horrendous.
Wow, I'm surprised by this, because my knowledge of a lot of cloud companies is when you delete things, it's not really deleted for quite a while. It takes a while to flush through the system. So it's impressive that Google managed to delete their operational data and then all their backups of it.
And then to compound that, last Thursday, US Pacific Time, 1522, Google Cloud ran a maintenance automation intended to shut down an unused network control component, but that wiped out 40 locations across Google Cloud. So 2 hours and 48 minutes of downtime, during which users of 33 Google Cloud services, including Compute Engine, Kubernetes Engine, experienced symptoms like VMs not being able to provision, VMs not being able to migrate, virtual networking configurations being lost, NAT and DPA allocation failures, all manner of things. So horrendous sort of 3 hour downtime to really quite critical services if you're going to run these kinds of operations.
Yeah, and like you say, though, it does show, and I think we've got another story coming up, it does show our reliance on these services. It's like when iCloud goes down, if Microsoft go down, and we've got that coming up, haven't we? We had Bing down for many as well, which impacted Copilot, DuckDuckGo, because DuckDuckGo uses some of the Bing search, and ChatGPT as well. So it does show our reliance upon a small set of people. If they have an outage, they delete some network config, all of a sudden half the world stops functioning as we know it.
So the Bing thing, which is our next story, was an outage for quite a while, actually. And to be honest, I hit this one myself. I used DuckDuckGo. I got up and I think it was Thursday morning. I started trying to Google Bing DuckDuckGo around a little bit, and it was just returning no results. And I thought, that's odd. Didn't think about it. Went to Google, started searching, saw the horrible AI search that we've already talked about this time, but at least it was getting results. Thought no more about it. But then later in the day, it came up that DuckDuckGo was down, but then Bing.com was down, and then ChatGPT interfaces were down. Yahoo Search, Ecosia, and others were all down because of a fault in the Bing Search API. So that was Microsoft down for sort of 4 to 5 hours as well.
Yeah, it's not good, and it'd be interesting though. Will we ever find out why these things were down? Nobody ever really says, "Oh, we were doing maintenance and it went awry," or "We had an attack." It's just left out there and then quickly forgotten about. But we are reliant upon it. Not a lot of companies at the moment.
It's quite interesting how little concern there was about Bing and DuckDuckGo going down, though, because you and I are outliers, I think. Most people use Google.
100%. Most people use Google. I try and get my family to use DuckDuckGo, but I know they use Google when they want to. They might change it, but there's so few people that actually use DuckDuckGo. Most people have never heard of it. It needs quite a marketing campaign, I think, for people to use it. But you're right, Bing could be down and the world would carry on spinning.
It did.
Yeah, fair point. It did for those 5 hours. For me, though, Google could be down for 5 hours and I wouldn't even know.
Google could be down for what?
Easily 5 hours and I wouldn't even know. But that's just me. But most other people in the world would know and would be in trouble.
I think you probably would, depending on the services, because you may not use Google or Microsoft services
I may not
directly.
use it
in that
directly,
way.
yeah, but indirectly, you're 100% right.
Indirectly, there's lots of cloud services. It'd be like Amazon Web Services going down. Lots of things would stop working.
Yep, and we literally have no idea what web things we're using that use AWS. It could be thousands of things we hit a day. You're right. But again, though, it just shows our reliance on those few vendors. It's Microsoft, it's Google, it's Amazon, sometimes Meta, obviously. Those sites start going. I mean, I've had texts from my family before going, is internet down? I can't go on Facebook. And then it's like, no, it's just Facebook's down. But obviously some people, to them, that is the internet.
I guess X.com won't have the fail whale like Twitter used to.
I don't know what the fail whale was.
You don't know? If Twitter went down, it would show a little upside down whale. It was called the fail whale.
It probably still has it because nobody's changed it, because it only seems like they change things once Elon realizes it's there. So who knows?
Sticking with AI, this is really the theme of the week. We should have called it AI all the time. Apparently, there's a potential brewing lawsuit between Scarlett Johansson, that's the way you're meant to pronounce her name apparently, and OpenAI. When OpenAI launched their GPT-4 model 2 weeks ago now, they showed it having emotion and having a voice, and the voice was recognized by some. So have you seen the film Her, starring Joaquin Phoenix? That Scarlett Johansson has a part within that. She plays the AI that he falls in love with, effectively. Anyway, Scarlett Johansson voiced that, and when the GPT model was brought up, it sounded eerily like Scarlett Johansson. Apparently, she'd been approached by OpenAI earlier in the year to be the voice of this ChatGPT model, and she'd said no. Fair enough. She's a very well-known actress. She doesn't want some licensed but unethical potentially representation of her speaking as the voice of a computer. She said no, and apparently ChatGPT or OpenAI went ahead and did it anyway, even though they contacted their agent a week before, because they'd clearly already written it in. This just seems like the biggest own goal you could possibly do, ChatGPT.
Yeah, it feels like they could have avoided this, but they just carried on anyway because they can, and I don't agree with this. It's not a good look, and I would imagine you don't want to be the voice of one of these things, because you could get lots of things wrong, and then people start thinking they attribute it to you and you being stupid, but you're not. It's just an hallucination that's coming through your voice. So I think she's right to have this pulled. If they'd asked her the question and she declined it, they definitely shouldn't have proceeded. If they hadn't have asked her and they proceeded, then I think maybe they were chancing their arm a bit. But the fact they even asked, I think they're 100% in the wrong here. It's stupid.
Yeah. So she told them to take it down. Sam Altman then said, and I'll read his quote out, "The voice of Sky, the name of the chatbot, is not Scarlett Johansson, and it was never intended to resemble hers. We cast the voice actor behind Sky's voice before any outreach to Mrs. Johansson, out of respect for Ms. Johansson. We've paused using Sky's voice in our products. We are sorry to Mrs. Johansson, and we didn't communicate better." You clearly did. It's as simple as that. You didn't do it a year ago, speak to her agent a week before, and then pull it because it sounded incredibly like her, without it meaning to be her.
Yeah, agreed. They're just backtracking badly on this one, and they're not handling it very well, are they?
They're really not. And this is probably not the person to annoy. I mean, Scarlett Johansson sued Disney. Not many people do that. So, and fair play to her. She's doing the right thing here.
100%, because if this starts and people start doing this, it will only get worse.
It totally will. Moving on, back to Microsoft briefly. Have you heard of Microsoft Fabric?
I've heard a little bit about it, but I must confess I know very little about Fabric. But my guys in my team at work, my guys and girls, they're kicking the tires on some of this.
So you better get on with it, really, because it looks like they're going to pull out Power BI as fast as they possibly can and replace it with Fabric.
Wow, okay. That's not good.
It's really not. Lots of businesses are built on Power BI. I know we use it within the university for dashboards and workflows and all sorts of things like that. So this is all very well Microsoft aggressively pushing forward something that you think is better, but I've barely heard of Fabric. I think I've seen one YouTube thing on it, and then this article from The Verge, the Register rather, talking about how quickly it's going to be deprecated. So starting 28th March, and by April 28th March, it's going to start being deprecated, and we're going to see Power BI licensing go away to be replaced with Fabric.
Wow, that's punchy. Microsoft
Very
usually take ages to do anything, but every now and again, it does feel like they get it slightly wrong.
There's got to be some mixed-in AI model or something that they're aggressively trying to get out there as quickly as possible, I bet.
Yeah, it could be, or some new revenue stream that they want to get you on, because that's normally what Microsoft do.
Yeah, free to begin with, and then they ramp up the costing.
100%, or they bundle it in free with your Office licenses and then have to take it out once they've got market share.
Yeah. Should we do some Apple rumors instead?
Let's do it.
Okay, so the first one, and we commented on this when the story broke a couple of weeks back about all the Apple Store executives going to Cupertino to be taught how to use the new Vision Pro, Apple Vision Pro, I should say it properly. We noted that Canada and the UK weren't in there, but this rumor from 9to5Mac from May the 20th is that the reason they weren't there is because they've probably already had the training, and we ourselves in the UK and Canada will be first in line for the Vision Pro rollout. Woo.
I'm quite happy about this. I want to go and have a go on it. I really want to just try it out. So I think this is good. I'm not surprised. It would make sense for them to localize the UK. It's probably not a lot of work relative to other languages. And I'm not surprised Canada would get it. They often get things in line with us. So I think this is good. I just wish Apple would be a bit more transparent about its rollout plans, because it's bumped along for a little while now.
Yeah, I think the Vision Pro, I know it's only been 3 months, but I don't feel a lot of confidence behind it. I know there's been 2 new things, the most recent of which has been Marvel's What If video that came along, which is like a 3D interactive version of one of their animated shows on Disney+. So that's good, but it feels a bit like pulling teeth at this stage. It's not. They haven't built lots of compelling content for additional rollouts.
Yeah, and they haven't really changed it much. I think we touched on this since it was first debuted in June last year, and then it's had a lackluster enthusiasm from Apple people. So it is disappointing they don't have more of a concrete rollout plan.
Yeah, maybe they're going to blow our socks off at WWDC, but I genuinely can't see it. They've got so much stuff to announce, or we're anticipating so much stuff, then it won't be that exciting. They're going to give us some chat models, and they're going to give us the ability to put icons somewhere on the screen, most likely, and some maybe a lick of paint here and there. Be able to. The latest rumor I said is you're going to be able to theme your icons. If you want all pink icons, it will do that for you as part of the ChatGPT model or the LLM model. So Vision Pro is probably quite a nice distraction from that, actually.
Yeah, maybe. I'm interested to see, are they going to do a true version 2 of the Vision OS, or is it just version 1 with some bits to keep it in line with the iPhone, like they often do with the iPad? It would be curious to see what they do with it.
Yeah, definitely. Second Apple rumor of the day. Apparently, we're not going to get M4 Mac Pros or Mac Studios until 2025, halfway through 2025. You what, Apple? What's this about?
Womp, womp, womp. This is quite sad, actually, in a way, because we've got them going, right, you're not delivering your new product, so can you update your existing products that are quite healthy? And it kind of feels like this is, I'm going to get the name wrong. Is it like Sinclair that they, and I think I've got the name wrong, but where they announced the successor before they... Osborne, thank you. So there was a story years and years ago, back in like the 80s or something, if I remember correctly. Osborne announced their version 2 or whatever the number was, and they announced it, and they said, but it's not going to be out for 6 months. And then nobody bought the version, carried on buying the version 1. They were waiting for this version 2, but the company went under before they could announce it. And you're kind of in that state now with the Studio, the Mac Studio. If this rumor is correct, that we're not going to get updated Studios and Mac Pros until next year, only people that really need them will buy them, or if it's a corporate purchase. Because if you're a home user, why would you go and buy a Mac Studio now when you know it's going to get much better chip next year and probably cost the same money? And you've seen the new chips are already out in other devices, and you're just waiting for the shoe to drop. We know the M3's out there. The M4 is now out in my iPad, as we've talked about. This just seems very strange how Apple's ended up in this state. And it is worrying that they're struggling with their software and their hardware to actually get everything on a cadence that works. And yet they keep making their life harder.
So I've popped in the show notes the link to the Wikipedia article about the Osborne effect. I 100% agree with you. I think this is madness. The single core performance of the M4 in your iPad is stellar. The M3 less so than the M2. So I was in this boat. I was thinking I need a Mac Studio to do podcasting and video editing and do all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to buy one now, am I?
Well, no, why would you? Because a year from now, you can get something that's way better. And it is interesting because like the iPad's been like this for about a year as well, because it's been sat in this dormant state where updates are coming, but they're not coming with any rush, and therefore you just got to wait, and they end up with a massive dip. So it does feel like the Mac's in that position. And equally, a lot of people that bought the M3, such as yourself, might feel a little miffed that it's only had 6 months in the sun of being the hot chip. But I don't know. Apple just seem all over the spectrum on this at the moment.
It shows a certain lack of consistency with the products. They should smoothly move through the line. I mean, the next version of the iPhone is going to have an what are we up to? 17? 18? I don't even know at this point.
It will be 18, I think, this year.
A18, and the rumor I heard about that was it's going to be chip parity again. The iPhone Pro will have the same chip in it. They'll stop doing this, keeping one back, which again seems mad. Having made the effort to split them, you're then going to roll back around that. So potentially the base model iPhone, will have a better chip than their Pro line desktops. What on earth is that about?
Do you know what? When we first heard about Apple Silicon, I can't imagine anybody had on their bingo card Apple's chip release schedule will be more scattergun than what Intel's was, because Intel were meant to do TikTok, where you get one amazing increment and one less so, and then amazing, then less so. Apple's is more all over the spectrum, and actually the line's a lot more fragmented than with Intel. I don't know, it wasn't what anybody thought, and maybe some of this is just they're moving at such pace that they haven't even got time to roll out all the chips yet. But I think anybody expected an M4 this year, well, especially this early in the year, that's kind of put the cat amongst the pigeons a little bit.
If they'd put the M4 as is, but called it an M3 in your iPad, nobody would have batted an eyelid.
100% agree.
It makes no sense. I get that they wanted to have iPad sales and they want to justify the bump in price beyond just the screen. They want to justify the power, and it's got an M4 in it, and whoop-de. But at the same time, you're leaving a product that hasn't been updated to the M3 yet, languishing 2 generations behind. And that's just going to annoy your Pro users. Pro users will move. If you live all day using DaVinci Resolve or Adobe Premiere Pro or Pro Tools or something like that, you're on a Mac because you believe it's the best, most performant platform. You're probably going through the M1, M2, right? And now they're spitting in your face again by not pushing the power forward as a user who will spend tens of thousands of dollars on these products. This just baffles me entirely.
Yeah, a very odd strategy there. Yeah, very, very strange. And you're right, if they had called the M4 chip in the iPad the M3 iPad edition, nobody would have said anything.
Odd marketing. Also, speaking of odd marketing, this potential rumor of an 18.76 foldable MacBook Air, foldable MacBook. What do you think about this?
Sounds kind of cool. 18-inch screen, yes, please. But it depends on. There's a lot missing in this. This is just a very speculative rumor for an M5 capable MacBook. So God knows when that'll be out next year, won't it? Or maybe the later this year will be on the M5. But an 18-inch screen that folds out sounds quite cool. I like the sound of this.
Yeah, it does. We haven't got the phones yet, and they're going to move straight to a laptop. I guess because they don't have touch in a laptop, this might be an easier form factor people to get on with. You can't feel the crease in the screen or something like that. It makes me nervous. Our last sort of touch screen on MacBooks didn't go well. The little screen below the thing, the touch bar was not a well-received thing. So this does bother me slightly. When Apple push this kind of thing, it's not always well-received. I don't think the world's screaming out for a laptop that can unfold a little bit further in the same way they are for a phone.
I would agree with you there. I'm surprised we're not seeing more on the phone, especially given that Samsung are doing the phones and have beta tested this for Apple. So, yeah, all very bizarre there.
Yes. Anything else in the news?
No, I don't think so. We're going to talk about the Microsoft event in the main show. So, no, I think that covers all the big hitters this week.
So, we talked last week briefly about how much we liked Apple Music's top 100 albums of all time. We've both found it baffling that it was web only. Michael Tsai, in the link in the first media story, also finds it baffling that why was this a web only thing when it should be baked into the full fat client that's on your Mac or on your phone or on your iPad or, God forbid, Apple Classical. It should be there. Did you follow it all the way to the number one announcement?
I must confess I've been a bit rubbish at following it through. I just want it within the app. I don't know. I just find it a bit disconnected, which is a shame because it is good. I've gone through it a little bit, but I haven't kept pace with it. But I am planning to sit down and actually look through it. Strangely enough, I was in the Hard Rock Cafe this morning for breakfast in London. And you know what? It was great. They were playing some really old tunes that I haven't heard in a long time. And it made me think of this, of actually there's probably a bunch of albums in here I want to go and have a look at and add to my library. So No, I'm definitely planning to sit and go. I just want to spend half an hour and go through it all and pick out albums that should be in my library that I know and love, but I just haven't listened to for a long time. I find it just odd that Apple are pushing all these app tools, but yet can't seem to make this work in the app. Even if they faked it in the app of just displaying web content, I just find the whole thing baffling.
Why are Apple bad at apps? It's really weird.
It is weird. And you touched on Apple Music Classical. Do you remember they did CarPlay support and pulled it? We still haven't had that come back. They're just not firing on all cylinders. Apple Classical is not on all your devices. I don't know. I don't get why they're so bad at apps. Some of these apps would be better if they spun them out, gave them to one or two people, crews, just to keep them updated and maintained. They would probably have a better life. It is frustrating.
I agree. I was going to talk about the top 100, but if you haven't listened to the whole thing or at least seen what's at number one yet, then I'm going to feel a bit constrained and I don't want to give spoilers away.
Well, maybe that could be a teaser for next week. We should review the top 100.
I just want to generally talk about my feelings about it.
Okay.
I was very behind it. I've listened to quite a few of the shows, so it's in two parts. If you haven't been keeping up with this in Apple Music, there's like a 40-minute rundown of the albums that make up the 10 songs in the 90 to 100, or 91 to 100, and they break them down all the way down to one. I'd say I've listened to 6 of them, those just breaking down the albums and all the rest of it, and that's superb. And then there's a sister or side show that goes through 3 or 4 songs from each album and plays them in their entirety rather than just talking about the circumstances or why it was chosen or whatever. And it's been Zane Lowe or Ebro or others from Apple Music Radio that's been doing those breakdowns. As it went on, I felt it was a little rap heavy. I like hip hop. I like rap music. I genuinely do. And a little rock heavy. There's very little pop in the chart. I don't want to say there's too much rap, but I feel like there's a lot of albums have been sacrificed for the sake of. And I know it's all personal taste for me, but I'm not the biggest Drake fan. I'm not the biggest Kendrick Lamar fan. I'm quite happy to see, artists of other types in there, but it just felt very dominant towards rap and rock. Or hip hop and rock. And then there's the number one. And the number one infuriates me for a huge degree, but if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to talk about it. So your mission next week, Chris, should you choose to accept it, is to go away and tell me what you think of the top 10.
Should I go and look now while we're live on air?
Well, no, because I guess we might get an honest reaction, and I can always kill the dead air while you go off and do it if you want. So I'll talk amongst myself for a minute. So while Chris is going looking at the number one song on the Apple Top 100.
Well, where do I go and look for this? I'm just grabbing my iPad, so I just go and open up Apple Music, I guess, and
you could go to Apple. If you Google or DuckDuckGo for Apple Top 100 albums, it'll take you to the right website. Just while you're doing that, I'll very quickly say that I've continued to watch Taskmaster. I managed to do that this week, and that's terrific. And Race Across the World, and Race Across the World is possibly becoming one of my favourite shows of all time, frankly, for how well they integrate the racing and the real life experience of those people, and giving you a sort of real desire to go out there and see the peoples of the world beyond what you look at through an airline windscreen. So it's just been a terrific show this time out, and I'm going to be very sad that they're finishing together. We've got Taskmaster episode 10 and the very last episode of Race Across the World next week, and I'll be a bit sad that they're gone.
So do you know what? I was saying this to my children. It's a shame that all this good stuff's come out all at once. Like, we've watched Clarkson's Farm in my house. It's fantastic. And normally they dumped all the episodes in 2 waves, whereas I much prefer just give me one a week. It just, keeps you talking about it more. And it's kind of my same thoughts of Apple. And when they release things, they release a big dump of stuff, and then you have nothing for months. Whereas I think if you just keep teasing everybody, it keeps the conversation going. And finding this top 100, by the way, is not a pleasant experience.
Well, just while you're enjoying that, I'll talk about a thing Apple are about to dump on us, or at least in July. I didn't even know that this was a thing, but there's an Apple time travel comedy based on the Time Bandits movie that's going to start streaming in July. So that's quite interesting. I think it's a great film. It's basically a Python film by any other name. So that's exciting. And Lisa Kudrow from Friends is going to be one of the titular characters in it. So I'm really looking forward to that.
I'm going to get very angry with Apple Music in a minute. No, Time Bandits does sound good. I like Lisa Kudrow as well. I never know how to say her name. Whoa, I've just seen what the number one is. So for listeners, I'm going to explain how I've got to the top 100 in a second. So this is Apple Music 100 Best Albums. I've just had a look at it. I'm just going back through the top 10. Oof.
So it's interesting, isn't it?
It is an interesting top 10.
So I'm okay with almost everything in the top 10. For me, I feel many of them should be top 30 rather than top 10. But the album that's at number 1 has absolutely no place, I don't think, even in the top 100, never mind the number 1.
It was a big album at the time. Late 90s, give or take.
There were lots of big albums in the late 90s.
I don't disagree with that statement, but I'm really not sure about his top 10 for me personally. But this is why 100 of the best ever albums is such a hard thing, because we've all got different likes and tastes. For me, I'm looking at the sort of 10 to 20. I'm actually preferring a few more of those albums, if I'm honest. But we're all different, aren't we? Are we going to say what the top 100 album is?
I think we'll give you time to flick through the list, and maybe we'll put in the show notes for next week to maybe discuss it in a bit more detail, because otherwise we'll get fully distracted. But I think it was just worth getting your reaction live on air. That I think, your disagreement with it is probably similar to mine, and we talked about this a lot at the conference I was at, because it was in the news, and lots of people disagreed with me. So I genuinely think that's from space. There were lots of big albums. The artist that featured on the number 1 was part of a band, and if the band's album had been in the top 10, I'd have been far happier with that rather than the individual singer, because the band's album, a terrific album.
Right, okay. And I'm sorry, I'm just going through the list while you're talking, and in some ways you kind of wish they'd maybe restricted themselves just one album per artist kind of thing to get a bit more variety in there, but there's a lot of overlap.
I'm not spoiling much by saying there are 2 Radiohead albums, there are 2 Beatles albums, there is 1 Rolling Stones album, there is 1 Elton John album. There's some odd choices made. There is no Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, one of the greatest singer-songwriters, but that's me, I get why. But there is no Tom Waits, there is no Leonard Cohen. There's huge gaps in this. There is no ABBA, one of the most influential bands of since the 1960s, late 1960s. No, there is a distinct lack of pop in this, this chart. I think there are 2 jazz albums. So for me, it doesn't really line up particularly well with the reality of what people listen to. And I presume a lot of it is to ensure that it's balanced, that it's not just middle of the road, adult-oriented rock, which is what the majority of America plays. But there's not a lot of electronic dance music in there. There's not a lot of world music for bands like Tinarwen and things like that in there. So it doesn't quite hang right for me. And I know it was 300 odd people that voted for it apparently, but it's just too heavily weighted towards rock and rap.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on this. And like, there's 2 Beyonce albums and things. I'm a little disappointed with it, if I'm honest. I'm surprised by some of the ones that are there. Maybe I need to go and listen to some more of these, because a lot of them probably aren't ones that I've got a personal affinity to. But I'm surprised by what's number 1, being very honest. But I must say though, Apple have not made this easy. So I've gone to Apple Music on my iPad. I'm running all the latest release software. I go to the Home tab. There's no way of me from the Home tab getting into the top 100 albums. I can click. There's one that's featured, and it's a Fleetwood Mac album. I can click on that, but that just takes me to that album. There's then no mechanism to get to the list. I then go to the Browse tab, scroll down a bit, and it says Best 100 Albums. So I tap on it. It says Go to Site, so I tap on that. Comes up. It asks me to sign in the top right. All right, sign me in. But do you want to change your location to the United Kingdom? You don't think it knows I'm in the United Kingdom. So I tap sign in. I then have to put my username and my password. It doesn't know who I am. But because I've got needing a USB key to authenticate me on a new device, it wants me to put that in. What? The whole thing's just so disconnected. I just don't understand how they've managed to make this so painful when they could have just embedded it in the app and hid that it was a web view from the majority of people.
It's their app on their service with their music. Why is that so hard? I genuinely...
Unless we're going to move to a web app for Apple Music and not have an app, I don't know. It's all a bit bizarre.
It's really bizarre. And the thing I find strangest is, where is the playlist of the top 100 albums? Add to my library.
Just want a list. I don't know. It's all a bit weird.
Let's call it what it is. It's rubbish. For such a good release, it's rubbish.
For such a great idea.
Yeah.
Lack of implementation detail.
So we're both in danger of turning into the angry guy from Inside Out, but I can see you've put something in the show notes.
Good segue. So I've just put a link in just to the IMDb database for Inside Out 2, I love a Pixar film. I love going with my family. My children are very keen that we go and watch this, and it comes out mid-June. I think the 14th here in the UK. I was just looking up show times while we were talking, but I watched the trailer and actually I think it looks kind of cool. And there's a whole new set of emotions coming, which I think is quite cool. And from the trailer I've seen, I think they handle it in a really good way. So I'm quite looking forward to this. I'm a little nervous taking my young children to watch it because will there be some themes that we need to discuss with them, but it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But I do like a Pixar film, and I did see a post recently on Daring Fireball saying there have been no good Pixar films since Toy Story 4 and Incredibles 2. I beg to differ. I think Luca, for me, was up there. I think some of the other more recent ones have been slightly problematic, but my kids loved Seeing Red. Have I got that right? They thought that was fantastic. I was more lukewarm at best on it. I liked Soul, my kids very much didn't. I really liked Lightyear, my kids very much didn't. So it has been a bit mixed, but Pixar were going to fall from grace at some point. They couldn't have carried on forever with their stellar back catalogue of movies. But I'm really looking forward to Inside Out 2, and I'm hoping my kids are. We're going to go to the cinema, we're going to have popcorn, and we're going to go and watch it and have a family day out.
Fair enough. One not to take them to is Deadpool and Wolverine. I have loved the Deadpool films, 1 and 2. 1 was better than 2, but 2 was great. Just the trailer for the third Deadpool movie, Deadpool and Wolverine, looks tremendous. Definitely not one to take the kids to, though.
I don't think my kids really know much about Deadpool, so I'm probably all right there.
I don't know if you've watched the Deadpool movie, but you should. It's terrific. Even if you're not a superhero person, Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool. It's terrific.
I know. I have seen Deadpool 1 and 2. I generally quite like the concept of the whole Deadpool piece. And I've been watching Welcome to Wrexham, and I was talking about this recently with a friend of mine. I hope Ryan Reynolds is actually how he comes across in that. You know, he's not obviously playing a character in Welcome to Wrexham. He generally seems like a genuine person that's actually trying to do some good. So I'm curious to go and see this. I will fit it in at some point.
Fair enough. Should we
And is Hugh Jackman still Wolverine?
Oh, he is in this one.
Perfect.
No spoilers for Logan if you haven't seen Logan.
I haven't seen Logan, but I like Hugh Jackman as well. I think he's very good.
He's very good. Watch the trailer. Don't watch it with your children. Should we talk about a game?
A game.
A game. In the games section, we can talk about a game. I could tell you how utterly addicted I am to Balatro and how it saved my life when I was flying up and down to Scotland, because it's terrific and I'm finally beginning to beat it. I've got good enough at it and I've spent enough time that I understand it. But I don't think you want to hear about that.
No, tell us about the game then.
So the game is called Call of Duty. You might have heard of it.
I've heard of it. I've played them a long time ago, less frequently and definitely nowhere near as many hours as you.
No, so I've spent a fair bit of time on Call of Duty, and when we were talking about the Activision Blizzard / Microsoft merger thing, one of the things that came up would there be platform preference for Microsoft consoles to release Call of Duty? And apparently the next Call of Duty is going to be, which was announced last week actually, is going to be brought to Xbox Game Pass. So I would call that a preference, yeah.
Yeah, it is it's not explicitly a platform preference. It's more, the Game Pass though is on PC and on Xbox, isn't it?
Sure, but Microsoft own Windows, and Call of Duty will only run on Windows, and Microsoft own Xbox, and fair enough, you can get it on PlayStation and other consoles as well. Switch possibly at some point. But you're putting on your platform your Game Pass for free, as long as you pay your subscription.
I was hoping we were going to see more Microsoft games coming to PlayStation, I must confess, because there was rumour of it, but my kids want to play Forza, for example. They're like, I want to play Forza. And I was like, oh, we can't easily, so we just haven't. But I'd like to see a bit more of that. But it is a slight. It's not. Yeah, okay. Maybe you're talking me into it. I was thinking more it's a service that they're showing preference to. But you're right. It is a platform preference.
Yeah. So we'll see how this goes. I mean, they're going to bring it to PlayStation as well, because of course they are, and whatever else they can, because the horse armor, as we've talked about, for the Battle Pass. But yeah, there you go. Unsurprisingly, it's coming to Game Pass, and I've just reminded me while we're talking, I have played one other game this week. I've had one round of a new shooter called X Defiant, which is Ubisoft's first-person shooter. It's made by ex Call of Duty, Treyarch, I forget which studio it is that makes it, developers. It's free. It's on PlayStation. It's on Xbox and Windows. You can have download it now and have a lovely time if you want. It was all right. It's all right. It's for a free game. It's quite high quality. Interesting mechanics, things you've seen before. No based matchmaking. I will revisit it at some point, but yeah, it was all right.
How does it work when it's free? How do
Battle
they?
passes.
Okay, so it's free but within app.
But so in the same way that Call of Duty Warzone is free, you can download it, you can play it. But if you want all the cool skins and the newest gun and whatever else comes along, then you pay the monthly battle pass of 12 quid a month or whatever it is just for that game, and you can have all the coolest outfits for your character.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. I worry when I see a free game. It's like, well, they need to make some money to exist and maintain. So that's good.
Anything else in games? Did you get any in?
We've played some Command & Conquer and some Gran Turismo, so probably nothing you want to hear around there. And the children very much playing Fortnite. There was a new Fortnite season drop this week. Is it right that you have to let Fortnite A download and B they take the servers offline while it all updates and stuff? My kids seem
Probably.
to think that Fortnite's down for a day while everything updates.
I think it's down for a day, but I think they just launched the new thing and the clock ticks over and you get new stuff out.
That was my understanding, but I know very little about this. My children are just starting to get into this world.
I mean, I can only speak about it from Call of Duty's Battle Pass and season, because they do the seasonal thing as well. And what will happen a few days before the update is due, and the update date is well known, it'll preload to your PlayStation or your Windows machine or whatever it is you've got, and then when the clock ticks over, everybody gets the update, the servers update themselves, and off you go. And maybe you get a bit of instability for about 5 minutes, but then you're normally good to go.
It feels like Fortnite isn't that clever. It doesn't seem to preload it. The kids turn it on the PlayStation. Oh, I've got to download the app update and off we go. But I don't know how proactive they are at checking for updates ahead of time.
Could be a thing. Should we do a main show?
Let's do it.
So, the big news last week-ish, this week-ish, May the 20th is when it happened, was Microsoft's Surface event, or I think they call it Build Surface, one of those things. They announced, helpful The Verge this, because I've already forgotten most of it, but the sort of 6 big things that they announced were the launch of their Copilot Plus, as they call them, PCs. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. This is Windows computers with Snapdragon X, the ARM-based chips inside of them. There's a few brands released immediately thereafter, Lenovo, Asus, Dell, and others. They're all promising 20-plus hour battery lives, as well as Microsoft's own Surface PC line. They've got an amazing battery life. They've got good performance of everything, silicon on chip in the same way the Apple M series are, and they've got neural processing units, so they can do AI stuff really cleverly. So that's why they're called Copilot Plus. They're claiming they're 58% faster than the M3 MacBook Air.
It's going to be curious to see what that's like in real life. It's great to see Microsoft moving to ARM. I do fear that the rest of the Windows ecosystem isn't going to work terribly well on ARM, but hopefully it will come over time. I hate the Copilot Plus name because you can get Copilot. You get Copilot Pro as an additional license SKU in your Office, and you can now get Copilot Plus, which is the hardware thing. They seem to be mangling all of Apple's names. And look, Apple aren't great at this either, but I've got Copilot Plus, I've got Copilot Pro, I've got Copilot. I don't know. Microsoft are doing Microsoft with the product names. That's all I want to say on that. But super interested to see where this is going to go. I do think it's going to be a while before these ARM-based processors really take hold in Microsoft's world. Unless they can get Office over to it, it's not going to be the right chip for everybody in the short term.
Is Office not already there?
I didn't think it was. Maybe I'm wrong because the next slide actually shows that Office is there. So maybe they have already done Office, but my understanding was there's not a lot of native stuff for the ARM chip.
So my brief understanding of this is they've already ported a load of stuff natively, and Office was one of those things. It's probably why it comes out to the Mac so quickly as well these days, frankly, that even if you were to take your Parallels or your nearly free VMware Fusion Pro on your Mac and run ARM for Windows, you could have Office on there, and all the Office suite are in there. It's more challenging for things that are built specifically for x86, and I think there is a translation Rosetta equivalent layer for ARM things so they can run them. Superpowered games like Call of Duty that we've just been talking about are more problematic because they've got kernel-level anti-cheats built into them, and they expect Intel chips in them. So I think it's that kind of stuff that's going to be problematic in graphics cards and yada yada, as you would get for AAA games. But many things will just run, and we see this on the Linux side as well. So Raspberry Pi, which I have a couple of, and I know you've got as well, has its own version of Debian Linux called Raspbian that runs on ARM, and occasionally you'll go to download something from the Debian format, which is called .deb, and they'll only be compiled for Intel binaries. And so the odd thing when cryptography is something that you don't see get moved around an awful lot between ARM and Intel-based chips. So it might be things like that. But I think the majority of things should run all right.
Okay, I'm happy to eat my words. And it does sound they've got announced Adobe's going to bring a bunch of stuff, which is one of the things coming up. In DaVinci Resolve, you've already talked about all coming to it. So maybe I'm wrong. It is interesting. It does feel like we've got processor wars. You know, you and I will remember these when we used to have Intel and AMD, and every other month, I'm going to say, you could get another 50 megahertz on your processor. And it feels like we've gone back to those days where last sort of, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, the processor wars in your laptop, desktop they've been moving forwards, but at a more glacial pace. Whereas all of a sudden, moving to ARM and the AI piece has really actually rebooted the need for us to upgrade our hardware a little more frequently, perhaps, than what we have done historically.
It's not at all related to the declining sales of the PC, is it?
No, they're obviously not trying to replenish, the dip in the graph to get it back up. But it's just interesting that we haven't been through this for a little while. This is quite a new thing that chips are coming out a lot more frequently. We've obviously talked about the M3, the M4. Now Microsoft are getting on that bandwagon. So yeah, it's interesting to see this happen all over again like it did in the late 90s.
So the second thing is they debuted a new feature called Recall, which keeps tabs on everything you do on your PC, is what The Verge have said. This is possibly the creepiest thing that Microsoft could have announced, actually, and it feels like such a massive own goal. So what this is your PC will continuously take screenshots of everything that's on your screen, including your bank details, including the people you're talking to, including all that kind of stuff. The only thing it won't take pictures of are copyrighted media. So if you're watching 2001: A Space Odyssey in a window, it won't take a picture of that, but it's quite happy to take a picture of everything else you're doing. With the point being, you can say, when was I looking at a brown bag, for example, later in the day? It will use machine learning to know what a brown bag looks like in the photograph, even if it's not mentioned anywhere in the article. It'll whiz you all the way back to 11 o'clock so you can find that brown bag in it. This bothers me on so many levels.
I think there's a couple of things in there. One, I agree with you. I'm not sure I like the sound of this, especially if you're on a Teams call and you're talking to a bunch of people and you're screenshotting their faces and they're not going to live on forever. It feels like screenshotting doesn't feel like a great way of doing it. I don't know. It seems like it's a way that's going to take up a lot of space. How does it archive it all? But I wouldn't have thought of that as being the solution. But I guess if you've got an AI tool to plunge through it, and I guess that will get smarter over time, maybe that will work. But it just seems an odd way of doing it. I don't know how I would expect it to do it cleverer than that. But I thought it would maybe understand more of the text rather than screenshotting the text to then extract the text out of the screenshot and then analyze it, if that makes sense. But it's just an interesting implementation detail. Do you think Apple are going to do something like this later this year when we get iOS 18?
The problem with this for me is that there is something available for Apple computers. It's not made by Apple themselves. It's made by a third party. John Syracuse has been talking about it on ATP sort of intermittently over the last couple of years, and it's something he's always wanted. It feels a bit Black Mirror to me. Can you rewind my life to 3 o'clock in the morning so I can pick up that detail I missed? And I think this implementation by this company on Apple computers is actually screen recordings rather than just screenshots. So you've got moving images and all the rest of it, and it just captures everything that's on your screen, and it's using H.265, so it's not particularly demanding on your system, and it's deleted after a period of time, and those kinds of things can get over. Part of the problem is I don't trust another company to have this stuff for all the reasons we've just been through. I've got my bank details on there. I've got who I'm talking to on there. I've got whatever else I'm doing. What I'm watching, what I'm seeing, what I'm typing on my computer, my passwords, everything is potentially being recorded. The only people you're going to trust to do this are your OS vendor. And I don't trust Microsoft to do this because we already know that they log many of the things that goes on in Windows. We already know how deeply this is my tinfoil hat moment. We already know how much of this goes to the US government in terms of, unless you're an enterprise customer of Windows, it goes to their advertisers, it goes to trusted third parties and all the rest of it for the stuff that's already on your Windows computer. So I wouldn't trust Apple either, frankly. The only people I'd trust with something like this would be an open source implementation, as we saw with the SSH thing, where they were very quickly able to find that code that was put into the SSH hack and pull it out of there. Only through open source code can you validate that this data isn't going anywhere else. And of course, anybody else can come along and install a thing and hijack it. Apparently, all these screenshots are just I forget the name of it. What's the small SQL implementation called? It's not MySQL. It's
SQLite.
SQLite. All these screenshots are stored in a SQLite database with some metadata, and then the large language model is run against them. So that's not very secure, is it?
It doesn't sound great, does it? I don't like the sound of it at all. Also, what are Microsoft going to do? They're going to start analysing my behaviour and optimise where they put ads and all of that. Are they then going to sell some of this data? Are they going to use it to build their models? There's just lots of things they may end up doing with it, and you may end up signing up for it, and actually no good will come of this. It seems like it's a lot of data stored in not a great format. I don't like it. It's going to be interesting to see where this goes and what feedback is, and will corporations let users have it or turn it off?
So from the also linked Ars Technica article, apparently a 256 gigabyte device will store 25 gigs of storage for this, and that's good enough for about 3 months worth of snapshots. That's a huge amount of your activity stored on your computer.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? And maybe this is how they're trying to drive hard drive up sales as well.
Yeah, this do not want, thank you. And frankly, if Apple released something like this without an awful lot of assurances, I don't want it on my Mac either. I don't want it on my iPad. I don't want this anywhere. If there's something I want to remember, I'm going to copy and paste it. And I see the convenience of it, but for me, the privacy violations far outweigh any moderately useful part of what it might come.
I would concur with that. I think the privacy, it's just insane, isn't it? What you're giving up for the convenience just doesn't feel right. We've already got history on our web browsers. I don't know. I don't think I need this in my life. I could be wrong. Happy to be wrong, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, and just for completeness sake, I've put in the show notes a link to the company that does the Mac version of it. It's called Rewind.ai, and that's the Mac implementation by a third-party company, not the OS vendor themselves.
Yeah, I don't like the look of any of this. I think it looks nice how they've done it, but yeah, too creepy.
The third thing they announced are new Copilot integrations with Windows 11. You're quite right. They're sticking Copilot in front of everything, and this is going to be AI assistant for your settings or your file explorer to help you surface things within the operating system. And again, I guess for an ignorant user, that's not fair. For a user that might not know what they're looking for, something like this might be useful. But wouldn't just better help and signposting in your operating system help this anyway? You don't need an AI assistant to say, here's how you eject your SSD, your flash drive from your computer.
I wonder if UI designers are going to get lazier, and we're going to see more of this.
I think developers are going to get lazier because of this kind of stuff. Certainly, they're not going to be answering questions on Stack Overflow, and they're just going to go and ask the ChatGPT-4 or something like that. I saw another thing this week that 52% of code generated by these LLMs for coding is bad. So, I think the quality of everything's about to get worse.
It's not a good stat, is it?
No. Fourth thing, Surface Pro gets a speed boost. Not a surprise, it's one of these Copilot Plus PCs in the same way that Dell and Lenovo are. We've already been through the battery life and all the rest of it. And it's getting an OLED display. Copying anyone, Microsoft?
I used to have a Surface Pro. Loved it. And Microsoft haven't really changed the look and feel of it in a long time. I think they actually got a lot right with the Surface Pro. I think it's a fantastic device. OLED display on it would be lovely, and apparently the chip is up to 90% faster if you've got the ARM version. So I do like the Surface Pros. I think if I probably had a Windows device, it's probably what I would buy.
With its Copilot key and its recall feature.
I would turn some of that off, I'm sure, but I actually really like the hardware. But I'm very much a tablet user. I'm not a laptop person, and I haven't been for a long time.
Yeah, there was a variant of these Surfaces that you could pull the screen off and use as a tablet, wasn't there?
We just pull. I think you're talking of two things here. You had the Surface Book, which came with a keyboard that you could. I think I've got the name right. That you could have the keyboard on the bottom and it give you extra battery and storage, but you could take the screen off and still have a fairly powerful device. I think some of Microsoft's hardware are really good. I do like the Surface Pro. I think it's a great work device. Obviously, you wouldn't buy this for a gaming device, but if I didn't have my iPad, this is the kind of device I would want.
I mean, they say it's 90% faster than what came before. That's not a surprise, is it? Those Intel or AMD chips, and those weren't efficient. They were super hot. They needed honking amounts of battery to get them to go. We saw the performance improvements with Apple and its move to ARM from Intel chips. So, of course, there's an improvement. Saying it's as good as an M3 MacBook Air is quite a claim, and it's entirely possible that it is. That's certainly what Qualcomm were saying we're going to come out from it. So, I mean, fair play. And I agree with you. I've had one Surface. I don't know which one it was. model of computer, and it was all right. It had a pencil, it had a keyboard, it had a weird sort of Alcantara keyboard with fabric that I didn't like at all. But other than that, it was fairly robust. Slow as anything, but it was fairly robust.
Oh, well, it feels like they fixed the slowness. I just love the Surface. Like I say, I'm a tablet person. A lot of people aren't. We certainly have seen it in our organisation. A lot of people just want a laptop because that's the kind of computer they brought up with. I
would probably buy the Dell or the Lenovo. I wouldn't buy the Microsoft one if I was shopping for one of these.
Yeah, potentially. You probably need to go out and evaluate the market, don't you? But I did like my Surface Pro. I would happily have another one.
I wonder if you can install Linux on them.
Oh, no idea. I probably wouldn't buy a Surface if I was going down the Linux road.
Anyway, if I have to buy another laptop that's not a Mac, it's going to be a framework one, as discussed previously.
I can understand that.
It's going to be faster than the MacBook Air is the fifth thing. That's not a surprise. It feels like they're repeating a couple of the points from earlier up, really, frankly to me. And lastly, as you've said, a bunch of other apps are coming. So DaVinci Resolve, CapCut, and others, Lightroom, Firefly, and Express, will all be available for Plus PCs. So, yay.
Yay. But it feels like this isn't 6 things from the event. It's more like 3 things. We've launched some new PCs that do Copilot Plus. One of them's a Surface Pro, and it's going to be really fast. 2, Windows 11's got some more integrations with Copilot, and we've now got this recall feature that uses Copilot to describe what you've done. And we're going to have loads of third parties do, optimize for these new laptops. So it kind of, everything tells quite a good story, to be fair, for Microsoft. They're clearly pivoting. You got to pour one out for the guys over at Intel at the moment because of what is going on for them.
Yeah, I mean, they're still going to sell it for big honking gaming PCs or, video rendering workstations. But we saw how quickly those mobile chips move through Mac's line. If Qualcomm can do this and it's this performant, and in the Dell machine at least it comes with a 27-hour battery life, the cards will move pretty quick.
Yeah, it does feel like Intel's days were numbered. It feels like they're now very much finite. It's shifted up a gear with this.
And at least AMD have got a graphics card manufacturer as well. They can pivot to that because you need GPUs. All this AI stuff needs GPUs. It's not as good as NVIDIA's, but at least they've got that to go on. And gaming's not going away, but it's pretty niche. Frankly, next time around, I'd buy a PlayStation 6 rather than build a gaming PC, I think.
I do love my PlayStation because if you're not in the mood to build stuff, it's just there. It updates itself. It's not that expensive at about £350. You get a lot for that money.
And my thing of the week, app of the week this week, will say why another reason why you might not need one of these things. But there you go. So what are your impressions of all this stuff then, Chris?
What am I going to say? I'm going to say it feels like Microsoft have looked at Apple's playbook and gone, yeah, we'll do all that, please. They're obviously way ahead on the AI integration space. You can see it. But laptop hardware-wise, it feels like they're looking at it. It's taken them a while, but fair play. It feels like they've done a lot of work underneath. Interesting mention of like Windows 12 running. It feels like maybe 11's here to stay a bit longer. There was talk of that coming. So I think on the whole it looks good for the Windows world. Be interesting, in the corporate space. Will we pivot to ARM chips at some point if you're getting this amazing battery life and it is more like a Mac/iPad experience? I'd be curious to see that. But I'm not surprised by it. I think Microsoft have been far too slow to do the ARM piece. I'm amazed they weren't running dual compiled OSs for a lot longer with a lot more active development on the ARM side. It feels like they did a bit of ARM and then they kind of stopped. And Microsoft were the same with 32 and 64-bit. It took them a lot longer to do that transition. So I think it's all good on the front, and I think fair play to Microsoft. It feels like they're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. A bit slow. We've said a number of times that they're a company that's sort of so diverse in terms of they've got Azure and they've got the web piece, they've got gaming, they've got operating systems, they've got databases, they've got everything. I'm not surprised they're sort of struggle to bring it together sometimes. This event, I think, is a good thing. They're benefiting from Qualcomm's expertise as much as anything else. Of course, they want to be there, but yeah, I agree. It's interesting times for Microsoft. That they're showing they can pivot and have a successful transition in the same way that Apple has. I feel like Apple are better at this stuff than Microsoft because they are quite happy to eject legacy stuff and say, too old, we're not supporting you anymore. Whereas Microsoft always want to bring people along with them. So I guess we'll see how it goes.
I think Microsoft do, but I think Microsoft is getting better at going, no, we're we're going to drop that and move now. They seem to be doing more of that, moving things into a legacy status a lot quicker.
There we go. Anything else for the main show?
Apparently they're going to Microsoft's website. Copilot plus PC is a new era for AI. So that's quite a statement, given that we're not very far into it.
Do you need to put glue in them to cool them down?
Well, I don't know.
Make the keyboard stick on.
Interesting though, I can get a Surface Pro in a sapphire blue with an OLED screen for £1,500, which seems okay. I can only
That's
get
the same as your
Wi-Fi
iPad.
I can only get Wi-Fi in it, but it does feel that 5G is coming. I can choose 16 gig of RAM and 1 terabyte for £1,750. So £1,750 gets me top spec Surface Pro. That's not bad.
It's not bad.
For what? That's cheaper than my iPad that I've bought. Admittedly, my iPad's got twice the storage and cellular, but that's not a bad PC that's brand new. And it comes out on the 18th of June.
Yeah, comparable to my MacBook Pro.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Interesting. Yeah,
But with
we
a
must.
sweet OLED display.
And it's got a sweet OLED display. Yeah, there we go. Cool. Okay, that's it for our intro. App of the week. I haven't got an app of the week this week. I've been too busy doing worky things, but I will recommend my Steam Deck once again because I've been playing an awful lot of Balatro. And who needs a big honking gaming PC when you can take your Balatro with you when you go, as well as Vampire Survivors or Command and Conquer in your case or whatever else you want. It's an immensely flexible little thing. We've talked it to death in this show, but it's a great device. And I'm here for Steam Deck too. Throw a bit more power in there, throw a bit more battery life in there, make it a little bit slimmer and a little bit lighter, and I'm all over it.
Yeah, I'm with you on this. I've been playing on my Steam Deck loads. And that sweet OLED, by the looks of it, £480 in the UK is probably the one to get with a 512 SSD because it's not a lot of money. It's a little bit more than a PlayStation, but that's a hell of a device. And if you've got a USB-C monitor or even a HDMI one but with an adapter, all of a sudden you're gaming on a big screen. I love my Steam Deck. I would 100% recommend it.
Yeah, that's a great thing. Thing of the week.
So thing of the week, I've done a slight curveball. I thought you were challenging me the other week. I was going to put my iPad down. You said you haven't had it yet, but I was looking forward to it, and it was the thing I was looking forward to. So this week, I've put something down that I have been and done yesterday. So yesterday I was in London. I went and saw the Back to the Future musical, and I'm a kid of the 80s. I love Back to the Future, the movie. I love all three of them. I've enjoyed watching them with my children, but I put the musical in there because we went and watched it for 80s children, and it was fantastic. So well done. The story is very similar to Back to the Future 1, but with some slight tweaks, obviously, to make it work for the show. But fantastic. What a nice experience. Great thing to go and see. It's 2.5 hours long. The theatre was incredibly hot, but fantastic musical. If ever you're in London and you love Back to the Future, you should definitely go see this because it had the music, the similar story, just all the things that make the film so good. They got some good elements distilled into the musical. So that's my thing of the week.
Catchy tunes?
Well, it's Power of Love and Huey Lewis in the News, and all those things they're singing it.
Oh, they're actually using the music from the film rather than not new songs for the...
They're doing both. They're doing musical numbers that they've obviously written, and it was all very good, but they're obviously also singing some of the pop tunes of the era as well in it. I think they've done a great job of working it all together. The sets, the stage, everything. It was fantastic. A really good A-star experience. I don't know what you rate musical shows on. I'd give it a thumbs up. If you're doing thumbs up or thumbs down, it's definitely a thumbs up. It was fantastic. We all enjoyed it. But yeah, would 100% recommend.
Cool. If you enjoyed it, you enjoyed it.
It was good. And it's nice to do something different.
Yeah, definitely. I think we call that a show, Chris.
I think so. So look, if anybody wants to get in contact with us, Rod is at G5Maniac at Mastodon.scot. I'm at _CGP at Mastodon.social. You can watch us on YouTube if you go to wakefromsleep.com and click on the YouTube link, or you can drop us an email at wakefromsleep@protonmail.com.
Talk to you next week, Chris.
Cheers, Rod.